Everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Reduce Your Carbon Footprint Through Solar Power. My name is Abroad, and I am the Community Manager for the Renewable Power for Business Working Group here at 2 Degrees, and I'll be your host for this webinar. I'm going to introduce you to Rob Threlkeld of General Motors, who's going to be presenting today. After presentations, there'll be some time to address any questions that you might have. You can question to me at any point during the session by typing into the Q&A box on the bottom right corner of your screen and pressing send. I'll leave questions to Rob at the end of the session. If you have problems with the technology or the audio during the presentation, please use the chat box on the right-hand side to send me a message. From the menu, just select to send the message to the host and I'll get back to you. Okay, so that's all from me now, and I'm going to hand over to Rob for the first part of today's session. Over to Rob.
Thank you very much. We are appreciate everyone joining today's webinar, and Lucinda for pulling this together. And as Lucinda mentioned, I'm Rob Threlkeld. I'm our Renewable Energy Manager here at General Motors. Work on quite a few renewable energy projects through the years, and today really to talk about solar power and our success in General Motors utilizing this renewable resource for powering our facilities. Next slide. There we go. Start a little bit about our environmental commitment, what we're doing in regards to our vehicles, supply chain, and product manufacturing. We have a commitment to sustainability that applies to every part of our business. That includes, as I mentioned, supply chain, product manufacturing, which includes utilizing renewable energy on our manufacturing facilities, and producing vehicles that our customers desire. I'm not going to read through the entire slide here for everyone's enjoyment. I could, but as you see, our commitment really is to reduce our environmental impact of our vehicles and our facilities, and the culture of environmental responsibility makes us think consistently to aid and to be leaner and more efficient. And it's really around the 4 boxes as you see below: waste reduction, energy efficiency. That we've done tremendous success on the energy efficiency side of our business, resource preservation, which includes wildlife habitat on our facilities, and then greener vehicles, which is improving our efficiency of our vehicles to fit our customers' needs, such as the Spark and the Sonic that are produced. If you look at our environmental principles below, obviously it's to restore and preserve the environment. We are committed to reduce waste and pollutants. Continue to participate actively and educate the public regarding environmental conservation, which I think is, as a large corporation as General Motors, which have a large footprint in communities, we have a significant impact on the ability to do that. Rigorously develop and implement technologies. Obviously, as you see, the Chevy Volt and electric vehicles, and some of our solar charging canopies that you can charge your electric vehicle with that are at our facilities. And then financially responsible environmental laws and regulations as we look at developing the technical sound capabilities to do that. As well, continually assess the impact our plants have on the environment, whether we look at landfill free, such as our Fort Wayne plant is. As I mentioned, wildlife habitat certifications, such as our Baltimore Castings engine transmission facility, renewable energy, which we've also got at our Baltimore facility in regards to solar. Look at that. Obviously, the 3 R's, as probably most are familiar: reduce, renewable energy, and reduce emissions, as we try to reduce our dependence on petroleum and other fossil fuels. And really to get into the gist of today's conversation is why renewable energy, which I think, as you've probably seen, solar power energy costs have come down significantly. Wind energy costs have come down significantly, and they're really getting to the point where they're very competitive and make financial sense for companies such as General Motors to into. As shown on here, we've got solar, biomass, and landfill gas, and really goes back to the early 90s when we were one of the industrial manufacturing organizations that got into the use of landfill gas. We believe harnessing renewable energy and alternative energy and we're one of the leading users in the manufacturing sector. In fact, at one time we were the largest industrial end user of landfill gas, and we were, until this year, the largest industrial user of solar energy in the United States. So you can see it's a strong commitment by General Motors, but in the same sense, they make financial business sense for General Motors to do. All these models allow us to basically hedge future costs of electricity and save us money, which ultimately returns money to our bottom line and to our shareholders. As mentioned, landfill gas, we are one of the largest industrial users of landfill gas. 3 of our facilities are powered with landfill gas, generally in the use of in the boilers, which are in our assembly facilities. Ford gets about 10% from its energy generated from landfill gas. We're in assembly where the Chevy Sonic is produced. At Buick Renault, about 25% of the energy used and consumed by that facility is from landfill gas. And then our Toledo transmission plant gets about 17%. So, when you look at these types of projects, you can really make a significant impact on the amount of renewable energy that can be consumed in a large assembly plant that you can think of that uses multi-megawatts worth of power on a daily basis. Mentioned earlier, solar and the global solar financials are improving. As you can see here, South American, Middle Eastern markets are strengthening, which as a global company as General Motors allows us to really take a forward-looking, as to where we're going to deploy renewable energy projects. In India, these are some charts that we get from, as mentioned here, this is Lux Research that allows us to really understand where are the economics for renewable energy going and where do we want to ultimately use resources internally in order to expand our renewable energy portfolio. So, as mentioned, being a large global company, this really gives us the capabilities to understand the next projects that will be on our pipeline in regards to renewable energy, and which is why we've been able to be successful. As mentioned, the global solar markets are expanding. This is from a slide out of Bloomberg New Energy Finance. And you can see that solar energy has grown significantly just in the last 5 years, almost 35 gigawatts. That is forecast and actually was surpassed in 2012, and when actually was 36 almost. And then our largest manufacturing footprint market now is China, and as you can see, China is a very significant and largest market for capacity growth, an area that is a focus point for General Motors at this time. The cost to install solar has decreased rapidly. It's down. Our first projects when we did our Rancho Cucamonga facility in California was about $9 a watt, and that was in about 2005. And it's come to you're well south of $3.50, and you're getting to the point where you're below $3 a watt for install on solar installations. So you can see it become very competitive. In fact, if you lived in the state of Hawaii, it would make sense to actually put solar on because it already is grid parity when you talk about the cost of electricity in Hawaii itself and some other countries. So it's a great to really drive and reduce your footprint in regards to the use of fossil fuels. As mentioned, manufacturing impact, you get predictable electric rates. It's a things from a few cost escalations, so you can more or less use solar as a hedge. The nice thing about solar is it comes during the peak time of power in the day, so you're able to really drive down your costs during the peak portion of the day. You can integrate it into your roofing program. It brings value from the solar incentives, and it protects from the UV degradation, as pretty much as most of our installations cover, roughly 80% of the roof. It gets into employee involvement and community outreach programs and platforms to educate the public. As mentioned earlier, you can really, when you employ 5,000 people, you've got 5,000 stewards in the community that can educate the general public on how solar and other renewable energy sources can be economically viable and an option for homeowners. And it's a global deployment model. Us being a large global company operating in many countries, we have that capabilities to replicate country by country, really educate the consumers, our end product users, and our employees on the uses of renewable energy and how it can be financially viable for the consumer. I'm going to go through our solar projects and some of the results of our solar projects that we've got on our facilities on a global basis. I'll also talk about some of the initiatives that we're doing to market our vehicles around driving sustainable manufacturing practices into our products. As I've mentioned, we've got a goal here to basically double the use. We've got about 37 megawatts on our facilities now. About 30 at the time of this goal was made, 60 megawatts by 2015. So it's really to maximize the solar system size at viable locations. It's getting over the marketing efforts of our Chevy products. Here in the U.S., we will be putting an ecologic label on our Chevrolet products. That includes what type of sustainable manufacturing practices went into building that vehicle, whether it's the use of renewable energy, whether it's landfill-free recycled content in our facilities, or we've got wildlife habitat certified sites on our facilities. And it really, as mentioned earlier, it's a community outreach enabler. As mentioned, we've got, if you got a three-shift facility and you've got 5,000 employees, you've got 5,000 stewards that can go out into the community and really educate. And having been in my son's second grade class last year, it was quite interesting to see how many students were very interested in renewable energy and solar power, and got to learn that over 50% of them had iPads because they wanted to know if they could charge their iPads with solar energy. So very interested and engaged students. As mentioned, our corporate sustainability report, if you go to gmsustainability.com, we've got the commitment to promote the use of 125 megawatts of renewable energy by 2020. This includes all sources of renewable energy. As mentioned, we've got landfill gas, we've got solar, we have biomass in Brazil, and at one time we did have small hydro in Mexico, and we are looking at wind as some options here in the U.S. and globally as well. We host 2 of the 5 largest rooftop arrays in the world. Goes to Spain. At the time, it was the largest rooftop array for several years before it was surpassed, but nearly 10.5 megawatts. Rüsselsheim, Germany is about 9.1 megawatts. Kaiserslautern, as you can see, we've got several megawatts there, and then in the United States, we're approaching 1.8 megawatts. We're doing it in phases at Toledo, and then our Baltimore and Rancho Cucamonga, as mentioned, was our first facility to actually get into the solar side renewable energy business at 1 megawatt, and this was done back in 2005. So really in the infant stages of getting into solar on large scale. In fact, it was the largest it was the largest array done by an industrial company back in 2005 when this deal was done. We have some ground-mounted facilities here in Michigan at our Detroit Hamtramck and Lake Orion assembly facilities. They're done in conjunction with Detroit Edison, our local utility. 9 facilities have solar charging canopies to promote the use of electric vehicles and allow the employees to charge on green energy, more or less driving on sunshine. Those facilities are located, as mentioned on this slide here, from Baltimore down to our Milford Proving Grounds to the Warren Technical Center. We've got 3 of those canopies here. It's a location that I actually work out of. And they get heavy. They are filled every day with vehicles and employees and customers that are or visitors that are visiting here and charging their vehicles. One in Shanghai as well at our headquarters for GMIO. As mentioned, we were until recently surpassed. We were the largest automotive sector OEM in the U.S. that ranked out top 20 of all commercial solar users. This was done by SEIA, the Solar Energy Industries Association. This was presented back in September during Solar Power International. That was in Orlando, Florida. As you can see, that General Motors was ranked in the top 20 both for number of megawatts installed, but number of installations also at our facilities. I can go through here some tips of how you can get into the solar arena and some of the methodologies or processes that you can do. There are several structures that you can get into when looking at options for renewable. You can do a power purchase agreement where you are the direct off-taker of the renewable energy. You basically have, in the end, these are all owned by third parties. except our one facility in Joinville, Brazil. It made sense for having a third party to invest and be able to take the tax credits and the incentives that are available, and for us to basically sign up a power purchase agreement, of which we save cost of grid power. You got the lessor and you got the grid equity, and as I mentioned, we're the host and lease for the facility. Other structure you can get into is a lease agreement. Basically, you are the host. This is found a lot in the feed-in tariff countries, mostly all of Europe, Ontario, Canada, of which the RECs and the power are basically sold to the utility. You are the host and receive a payment, more or less a lease payment for utilizing your roof space, which for us makes another way to earn cash on a roof that basically would serve no other purpose but to protect you from the elements. For us, it's another way to drive value to our facilities and drive down our costs. The implementation phase, I'll go through some of the lessons learned as we've gone through that and done almost 7 megawatts. Really is to identify the feasibility for the project. So roof addition for us is a significant issue. We've got some old roofs and we've got new roofs, but you got to take into account if you're going to put a 20-year asset on your roof, what is the roof and will it last for the 20 years that you've got that asset on there. Interconnection is key. Some utilities, you've got to work through the interconnect agreements. Those can be challenging in some countries. In other countries or states in the U.S., it may not be as difficult. Ohio is one that's pretty relatively easy. The incentives obviously are very regional, very state-driven. So where are the incentives located allow you to drive and reduce your costs on energy. And risk assessment are two other locations that you deal with. And what I really get into risk assessment is the portion of putting these assets, if they're located on your roof, is your roof structurally sound and has capabilities to handle the load in the event that you've got snow loads that you deal with and other events that have happened recently, such as Hurricane Sandy. Although a lot of solar systems did weather the storm, it's one of the very got to take into account. What we typically is get into a preliminary agreement, would identify costs and work with the supplier. They're into a final contract for due diligence and finalize costs and cash flows and the savings to General Motors. And third-party designs and constructs it with our input in regards to how they access our facilities and ensure that they've got the right safety plans in place to protect both not only their employees but to protect our employees and our facilities. And then you get into the commissioning phase after it is done. Some of the challenges that we have gotten into, and it's as I showed you on that global slide before, is you've got some very state incentives, renewable portfolio standards, pricing, which are renewable energy credits, go up and down. Maryland at one point they were over $300. New Jersey they were over $600. Those have come down significantly since. Current conditions in regards to tax credit appetite. While the federal government in the U.S. has 30% tax credit, you got to find an equity partner that has the appetite to take that tax credit. Due to a lack of well-defined federal program, there is really no federal policy associated with renewables, nor do we have a really what I would say robust energy policy in total. Net metering is limited to a few states, and what I mean by net metering is its capability in the event that you're producing more power than you're consuming, the ability to sell that power onto the grid to the utility. Utility support in regards to distributed generation and smart grid capabilities. And what I add is the ability to basically put a solar array on your facility and meter it back to the grid. And then the smart grid being able to talk to the utility and maximize your cash flows in regards to the pricing of the power on the grid at that time. Get into initial approval. It's really a clear understanding of reason, including savings, the offsets, and the value of the PR. Then risk assessments and tolerance. You are entering into a 20-year commitment, so what are the risks associated with if that facility should close? How do you address those risks? Accounting perspective. And financial approval, it's balance sheet, plant longevity, as mentioned, you got to deal with those, and then technology. Technology is pretty well stayed the same. Look at the types of panels that are out there, mono and polycrystalline, but you will see some new technologies down the road. So how do you address new technologies that may improve your efficiencies and have some flexibility in the installation so that you can, basically replace if you need to. I would get into some recommendations as line up with reputable, experienced developers and suppliers. You've got a lot of developers that are out there. You want to make sure that they'll stand by a commitment for 20 years, and that includes panel manufacturers as well. Financing is available up front. As mentioned, we typically do all these through a third party. And if you do not have financing lined up front, you may go through the entire negotiation only to have it fall through at the end. Top leadership and reason with them, and I were supporting these types of initiatives, which from General Motors top down we were supporting because they make financial sense. Involve local management because they're going to have some questions, may not, as mentioned, completely understand the renewable energy component, the solar component in general, and when anytime you're putting something on the rooftop of a manufacturing plant, you have the opportunity to potentially impact the production below, so you want to ensure that you've done everything reasonably within your control to address management to ensure that those do not happen. Stay involved with the implementation. I've done quite a few installations. They've got some good lessons learned from some of our early installations, and taking those lessons learned throughout the other installations and doing that globally as well. Prepared for surprises and plan your PR carefully around that. As mentioned, while we have done a solar, these have to make financial sense for us, and do in every case that we've done. On renewable energy in your vehicle, we've teamed up and done some work with OnStar. They've been engaged in the Pekin Street project down in Austin, Texas. But you have the ability here to charge your vehicle with apps that are out there. This one is one that's actually got by OnStar that allows you to reduce your cost of charging. You can charge it when there's renewable energy on the grid. You can charge it when the costs of electricity are at the lowest point component of the day. So there are apps out there for you to improve how efficient you can drive your vehicle from a cost perspective. Very interesting. I mean, there's multiple ones out there. I was just on a website the other day that it's got a bunch of, I think, third party. It's run by a third party, but it's Volt drivers and gives them how many miles per gallon and if they're charging on renewable energy. It was quite an interesting website to go to. And that really here from a General Motors perspective, we're here to design, build, and sell the world's best vehicles and do it with sustainable manufacturing practices in our facilities. With that is the last slide.
Great, thanks, Rob. Okay, we've got a little bit of time for some questions now. So we're going to kick off with our first question, which is, how did you go about identifying an EPC to work with to deliver the project?
Basically, we've invented a solar kind of company right now. They're called Visol Energy. That's the company we've used of choice. In prior installations, we've done a lot of them with utilities, or I would say Constellation Energy is one of them. They have a subset of their regulated utility that does these installations, so you pretty much have an idea that they're going to be around for the long term and long haul to maintain these facilities. So we look at, how long the company's been in business, what type of background they have in the solar business, and how many megawatts they've deployed. If they've not deployed a project and this is their first one, we would typically shy away from doing such a project.
Rob. Our next question is, what would you advise for a company based in a country which sees more rain than sunshine?
Well, look at Germany, which it gets about the same amount of sunshine as Alaska, and they get quite a bit of rain there as well, and they're one of the largest markets in the solar industry. In fact, they are the largest market in the solar industry. So even if the sun doesn't shine, you can still produce solar power.
Okay, we've got a question from Sylvia who says, does General Motors extend its renewable energy program to its supply chain?
looking at that right now. We have not, but we are looking at a couple pilots with some of our suppliers to see what interest they have in supporting those types of initiatives.
Great. And what is your view of solar collectors in South Africa for a plastic processing plant? One of our attendees is asking. Apparently, power cost is around 1.5 rands per kilowatt. That's something you're able to expand on, really.
We are, I would say, in our international operations region, which includes South Africa, that's one of our countries we are paying close attention to in regards to solar and what we can do. Power there is very expensive. Power there is also somewhat unreliable. So we are looking at, how can we bridge and use distributed solar power in our facilities. Those are some of the rationale as to how and what trees and what facilities we look at. And two of those, as I just mentioned, cost of power and reliability are locations that we are focusing on.
Great. Our next question is, on a private residence, we have seen systems where the collectors are able to produce power during the day and then at night it uses power off the grid. Is this an economic system to use along with things like solar geysers?
Repeat that. What was that again?
Yeah, absolutely. On a private residence, we have seen systems where the collectors are able to produce power during the day and then at night it uses power off the grid. Is it an economic system to use along with things like solar geysers?
Yeah, I would say definitely. One thing that's nice about the solar power during the day is you're replacing what is the peak cost of your power. So it makes most sense to use power and solar power or any renewable energy for that matter during the daytime hours and then off-grid during overnight hours, which is where a lot of some of the utilities, San Diego Gas and Electric being one, are even giving special rates to electric vehicle buyers to actually entice them to charge during those times even.
Okay, and our next question is from Chris, who says, do you think solar will play more of a part than wind in General Motors' future, and so why?
Well, currently solar is a large component, as is landfill gas. I think some of that gets into that we're trying to displace our peak time power of the day when wind blows overnight. However, we are looking at some wind projects down the road that hopefully once we get through approval could become a significant part of our portfolio as well. I think from a General Motors perspective, it is really to develop all types of viable projects that save GM money and basically deploy multiple renewable energy resources where we can. So wind, biomass, landfill gas, solar, all those will be a component in our portfolio of renewable energy projects.
And we've got one last question from Cyrus, who says, what is the approximate ratio of megawatts produced to the total amount you use for the manufacturing of cars? And he's also interested in hearing about the amount of carbon dioxide saved.
Look at our manufacturing facilities. They obviously are in the multiple, north of 10 watts easily. And even with a 1.2 or 1.3 megawatt array, and you look at system efficiencies of, say, 15 to 20%, you're replacing several percentage points of renewable energy with solar power. The landfill gas is a much larger component of that, and then since these are all third-party owned, you got to be careful when you look at the carbon component, because typically the carbon component is what supports the project as well, and that typically would go with the third party as part of the renewable energy credit. So we're basically, leveraging our size and scale to deploy large-scale renewable energy projects, which ultimately drives down the cost for everyone. But the carbon component actually goes with third party in most cases, or in the countries where you've got feed-in tariffs, it goes as part of the way the country is actually developing their renewable programs.
I know I said that was the last question, but we have had one last question come in, which I think is quite an interesting one. Would sustainable ambitions be actionable from the board's perspective if the financials did not stack up?
Well, basically our direction is, most of our capital goes to producing and selling the world's best vehicles. So I would say all these projects have to make financial sense for General Motors in order to move forward with these. And we have, good projects going down the line here that I've got in the mix that have some pretty good payback. So I would say we've got enough projects that make definite financial sense for General Motors to move forward on, and that'll be the path we'll take, down the road.
I think something that I found as a community manager for our engagement group is that a lot of people find it hard to get the board on board to approve solar projects and other renewable projects. What are your top tips for doing that, and how did you get successful with that?
The biggest thing for us is, we look at from an accounting and risk perspective, is how do you manage these in more of a portfolio. So say I deploy across, you look at the solar charging canopies, you look at the number of facilities we got solar on, what's the risk of any one of those projects, going south, and then how do we manage that risk? And what we've done is typically in our contracts is put in the ability to relocate. So if we close a facility, can we relocate it? Where would we relocate it? Would it relocate to another GM facility potentially, or can we relocate it to, a school? But I think, as we mentioned, it's managing a portfolio of projects, and what is the risk of any one project, having to be closed as a result or removed as a result of a facility closing. And with that, we've had quite a bit of success managing the risk on our side.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's session. I'd like to thank you all for joining and for your questions and comments. I'm sorry that we weren't able to answer all of them, but I'll see if we can address those after the presentation's over. And thanks also to Rob for his great presentation. We've been making a recording of this as we've been going along, and I'm going to be posting that recording on the 2 Degrees website tomorrow, and I'll email that to you as soon as it's up. That's all from me. Thanks for joining, and I hope to see you again on another webinar soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.